Hey guys, today I'm going to be sharing with you my favorite books that I've read so far in 2025. So it's the halfway point of 2025, so what a good time to sit down and think about the books that I've read thus far this year. What books are standing out? What are the contenders for my favorite books of 2025? So yeah, let's get going. I have 5 books that I'm going to be sharing with you guys that are my favorites thus far this year. And I was able to narrow it down pretty easily. There's been a lot of books that I have enjoyed, but that's just it, enjoyed. So I'm kind of talking about like books that I just really was like, oh yeah, I love this, you know. That's what I'm always looking for when it comes to my favorite books of the year. What are the books that are just, I'm like, oh my god, I freaking love this, you know, things that are just really sticking out to me. So yeah, these are the 5 that really have stood out to me so far this year. At number 5, I have The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. And this is the only book on the list that is like an older book. Everything else on this list is books that were released here in 2025. Yeah, this book was published, let me see what the original date was. Yeah, this book was published way back in 2017. So yeah, like I said, strangely enough, how this list worked out, this is the only older book on my list. So yeah, what you need to know about The Girl Before by J.P. Delaney. This is told in like 2 different timelines, but both still modern, you know, not no historical fiction aspect or anything. They're both contemporary timelines. And in both timelines, we're following 2 different women. One named Emma, one named Jane, and they're both kind of trying to get away from some sort of personal tragedy that has happened in their life, and they just need some getaway, they need some sort of escape. And in both of these modern contemporary timelines, both of these women, they find out about this ultra modern house. And when I say ultra modern, it's ultra modern. And this house was created by this really eccentric billionaire architect who's like really picky and specific about certain types of things. So within this house, how best to describe this house? It's a very kind of bland house. It's a gorgeous house, but it's very bland. You know, everything is kind of just really static and like all white. And like I said, the eccentric billionaire architect of this house, he has like all these codes and rules about things that you can and can't do in this house, because the whole point of this house is to just be really simple and basic and take out all of the things in your life that are weighing you down, you know, all of the material things in your life that you don't really technically need. This house is forcing you to strip bare and just have the essentials that you need to really kind of, you know, liven yourself back up again, if you will. It's all really crazy and bizarre. So the thing is, these 2 women in both of the timelines, yeah, they see that this house is really kind of strange and weird, but they're willing to go with it because, like I said, they're both suffering from some sort of personal trauma in their life that they're trying to escape from and trying to reclaim their lives back. So they're going to take this opportunity to see if this house will kind of help fix them to some degree, if you will. And yeah, what follows is some insanity. So the first woman who comes to the house, Emma, we find out through the character of Jane, who is the second tenant of the house, we find out that Emma died under mysterious circumstances. So a lot of this book is the character of Jane trying to figure out what happened to Emma, the girl before, if you will. And yeah, does it all have something to do with this eccentric billionaire architect and whatnot? So yeah, the nature of the story is definitely like a murder mystery, a thriller, if you will. And yeah, both of these women, like I said, it's been told through both of their points of view, their experience within this house and the relationship that they form with the architect. Yeah, it gets pretty crazy in here. It gets pretty wild. This book, like I said, like it's a murder mystery thriller. It constantly kept me guessing. I was never quite sure the direction this book was going to take. And I appreciated that, because sometimes I thought I had the plot figured, and then there'd be something else that would happen, and I'd be like, oh my god. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty successful murder mystery thriller. And after I read this book, I did watch the mini-series that came out like on HBO Max. I happened to watch that mini-series after reading this, and I think that mini-series was actually a really good adaptation of this. At number 4, Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fito. The best way to describe this book, it's basically historical fiction horror, if you will. Yeah, it's a very tiny book, a really quick and easy read. What you need to know about Victorian Psycho, obviously it takes place during the Victorian era. We're following this woman who becomes like the nanny, if you will, of these two kids. So she's living with this wealthy family, taking care of their really spoiled, egotistical children. And yeah, our main character in this, what a character she is. She's really strange and bizarre and peculiar, and she definitely has some sort of hidden agenda that you find out over the course of this novel. Why exactly she kind of came to this family specifically. There's kind of a lot to it that's explored within her background, and by the time you reach the conclusion of this book, it really hits you. It hits you quite hard, and it's pretty shocking. And like I said, this is historical fiction horror, so yeah, definitely go into this book expecting a lot of grotesquerie. There's a lot of grotesque moments in here, a lot of macabre moments. It gets pretty dark and gloomy and bloody and graphic and gory. But I think not to the point that it's like gratuitous. Yeah, no, let's put it that way. I don't think it's done to the point that it's overly gratuitous, but there's some pretty shocking imagery that happens in this book that I was like, oh my god. But yeah, I definitely really highly appreciated this book. I have been slowly discovering that I am enjoying historical fiction horror. It's like my new jam. At number 3, Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. What you need to know about this book, this is essentially a imaginative retelling of Carmilla. Carmilla being like the very first vampire book, because a lot of people think of Dracula being the first vampire book, but no, Carmilla was one of the first vampire books. So that and like another book called The Vampire by I think John Polidori. Yeah, Dracula came after those two books. So yeah, this is a imaginative retelling of Carmilla, and this book, wow, seriously, this is another historical fiction horror genre book. Like I said, I'm just really getting into historical fiction horror. This book was just so intense, but like quietly intense, you know. It never like just kind of throws things out at you for shock value. This book has a lot to say. It does a lot, and even though it is a vampire book, what's really cleverly done about this book is that the word vampire is never once uttered or mentioned. It's like you, the reader, are kind of going into this knowing way more than the characters do. That the character, like when the character of Carmilla does pop up, you know she's no good and she's a vampire. But yeah, what the story is about, it's following a woman. She's like 30 years old. She's like just hitting 30 years old. She's been in kind of this lackluster marriage for about 10 years, and she's just really feeling deprived and lonely in her life. So yeah, her and her husband, they're going off to another estate where they're going to be hosting like an upcoming hunting party, and that she's going to be put in charge of. So yeah, on the way to this other estate that they're heading to host this hunting party, this is where they come across a carriage accident, and this is where they are introduced to the character of Carmilla, who is a really strange, enigmatic figure in this book. Like I said, you, the reader, are totally full aware she's a vampire. But yeah, the other characters have no idea that's what she is. So it's kind of at this point in the story that the main woman, the main character in this story, she starts getting closer and closer to Carmilla. There's just something that's really appealing to her, and that Carmilla is really opening up her eyes and broadening her horizons and kind of really helping her to reclaim her sense of self. Because yeah, our main character, she has lost this sense of self, you know, through her marriage and whatnot, and she's trying to find herself again. So yeah, that's kind of essentially Carmilla's plot in this, is to get our main female character to realize who she is again. So yeah, that's kind of as much as I want to go into with this book, because it's one of those books. It's really atmospheric, and there's these moments of tension and intensity. Yeah, some really creepy horror elements, especially in regards to vampirism. Um, and yeah, it is. It's definitely a really highly feminist book. I would say, definitely really highly feminist. Yeah, I just really absolutely love this book, and as you can see, it made number 3. There's a good chance it could move up a little more the longer I think about it, but we shall see. At number 2, The Pretender by Joe Hargan. I was really highly anticipating this book with much anxiety. This book is historical fiction, and it takes place during like the tail end of the War of the Roses, and then kind of like the aftermath of the War of the Roses. And I am someone, one of my favorite parts of history that I have been enjoying, like, doing further research on and studying, is the War of the Roses. Yeah, if you have no idea what the War of the Roses is, it was kind of this really turbulent time period in English history when there was kind of this constant back and forth between these rival factions, and they were all essentially related. They were all family, but yeah, all these different rival factions all vying for like the throne of England, effectively. Yeah, you probably recognize the term War of the Roses, likely from a lot of comparisons to like Game of Thrones, for instance, because George R. R. Martin, he based a lot of Game of Thrones off of the real historical War of the Roses and whatnot. So yeah, either way, this book is taking place during the War of the Roses, but we are following one of the pretenders to the throne, hence the title of The Pretender. So yeah, kind of the backdrop history. Yeah, King Edward IV, he dies unexpectedly, and one of his sons should become king, but Edward IV's brother decides to take the throne, and he becomes Richard III. And that's when we get the whole mystery of the princes in the tower, because what did Richard III do with his 2 nephews, one of which should have been the proper king? So yeah, we have Richard III taking the throne, becoming king, and then this is where we have the arrival of the Tudors, and Henry Tudor comes in, takes the throne in battle from Richard III, and yeah, we get Henry VII. So, kind of going more into the history there, yeah, Henry VII, once he does become king, he does become a rather paranoid king, rightfully so, and he just sees conspiracy and treason all over the place. And that's where this story kind of starts to get going. This novel is following a young boy. I think he's about maybe 10, 12 years old, something like that. And his name is John, and he's just living his best life out there on a farm. He has no prospects in life. He's just a peasant. He's expected to become a farmer when he grows up. So one day into his life, this nobleman comes and is like, hey, you're actually not a farm boy. You're actually the son of the Duke of Clarence. The Duke of Clarence was one of the brothers of King Henry IV. So yeah, this young boy John is saying that he is actually nobility, and that he has the actual right to the throne over the current Henry VII. So that's where this story really kicks off and gets going. This young boy John being pulled from obscurity, pretty much. People telling him that he is the rightful claimant to the throne of England. And so he is first sent to like Oxford for education, then he's sent to Burgundy to learn like aristocratic manners, and then he's sent to Ireland to learn political intrigue. And yeah, all of this kind of builds up to this big huge battle where he finally gets the attention of Henry VII, where Henry VII is really kind of truly kind of frightful of him. He sees this boy as a threat, even though he's just a boy. So yeah, this book is covering about like a decade of time or so from the time this boy is about 10, 12 years old. And I think by the time you kind of get to a certain point in this book, he's about like 18 or so, but he's still considered a boy, So yeah, this whole book is just kind of exploring this whole notion of this boy, his coming of age story, which really gripped me. I enjoyed his coming of age story immensely, and yeah, him being pulled from just a simple, innocent, basic life as a farm boy, and yeah, kind of given this weight and burden and responsibility that people want him to be the next king of England. And yeah, people are fighting and dying in his name, you know, plotting and scheming in his name, and it's a lot for him. And I just loved so much what Joe Hargan did with this book, the trajectory of John's story, and it's a really highly comedic book for the front half, but it starts to get really dark and serious by the second half. You know, a lot of that humor and silliness is stripped away as John's kind of personality is kind of stripped away. You know, his very essence of being. But yeah, I could go on and on about this book, you guys, seriously. Just know, I love this book, okay? I freaking love this. Just Joe Harkin's very meticulous historical research is just awe-inspiring. And my favorite book that I've read so far here in 2025 is The Favorites by Lane Fargo. Wow, boy oh boy. You know, this is not like the world's best literature, you know, let's be honest, it's not the world's best literature, but wow, is it fun? Is it entertaining? Is it sexy? It's thrilling and exciting. It's intense in places, you know. Yeah, what this book is focusing on, it follows a pair of two like ice dancers, a guy and a girl who have like a relationship with each other, and they both want to compete at like the Winter Olympics and win gold for the US. So this whole book is their story of trying to get to the Winter Olympics, get the gold, but we know that something terrible has happened in the meantime, because flash forward like 10 years, flash forward like 10 years to like now, the present. There's like a documentary that's being made about these two figure skaters and their tumultuous relationship and kind of their downfall in some ways. And so this documentary is seeking to figure out all the twists and turns and craziness that happen with their relationship and their journey to try and claim the gold at the Winter Olympics. So this book, the whole frame of the book essentially is the documentary, and you get like bits and pieces of information through the documentary revealed, and then kind of in between all that you get like the flashback stuff to our two main figure skaters, like what their relationship was like, how they first started getting training, and just their step-by-step process of getting closer and closer to the Winter Olympics. Yeah, I just love this book, you guys. I love the scorching chemistry between your two leads. I've said this before, I'm not really a sports person, but I love gymnastics at the Olympics, and I love figure skating at the Olympics. That's like the only two sports I like. So yeah, when I found out that this book was going to be focusing on, you know, ice figure skating, ice dancing, what have you, I was like, oh hell yes, I am here for this. So yeah, if you love a good scorching romance and just a lot of crazy shenanigans and just crazy twists and turns that keep getting in the way of these two people, you're probably going to love this book. And I need a Netflix TV show for this, okay? I seriously need a Netflix TV show. That's how good and how much I love this book. So you guys, that is it for the 5 books that I've enjoyed thus far in 2025. In the comments below, have you guys read any of these books? Do you plan on reading them? Or do you have a completely different list of your favorite books so far this year? Just share with me down below. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.